Welcome to another edition of Revolution Recap as we're joining you again during the suspended period where the New England Revolution MLS is not playing games due to the coronavirus with still no end in sight, no known date for return. Exciting episode today where we'll be joined by Henry Kessler. We pre-recorded an interview with him, but joining me today is Greg Johnstone. Greg, how you doing?
Very well. We survived April, another month without MLS soccer. So, surviving, but I'm getting a little antsy for some sports. You can only watch the Belarusian league for so long.
Every time you say we survived a month, I feel like it's really like we survived a year, because these months do not feel like just months with the way things are going.
Yeah, I think Tom Brady left the Patriots like 4 weeks ago, and I mean he's been written out of my mind for it feels like 3 or 4 years at this point. So time seems to be moving a lot slower these days.
Yeah, I think without sports to help time pass, especially in the current situation where you can't even go out to a restaurant for dinner or anything, it makes time go by really slowly. But we won't waste too much time on that. I'm personally excited that we got Henry Kessler to join us. I think he's the first player we've had on Revolution Recap, I think, since 2008 when Jay Heaps joined us. So about time we ended that streak of not having players on. So we'll play that interview for you now. We're excited to welcome to Revolution Recap Henry Kessler, the 6th overall draft pick from the 2020 MLS Super Draft and starting center back for the New England Revolution. Henry, thanks for joining us.
Thank you guys for having me. Appreciate it.
So how are you holding up during these tough times? Has it been tough isolating away from your family in a new city?
Yeah, it's been difficult, especially being in a place that I'm not too familiar with. Only been here a couple months, but I think I'm doing all right, about as well as I can be. Trying to stay as active as possible, but at the same time being smart.
What does the team have you doing now to kind of stay in shape during these tough times when you obviously can't meet up at a training facility and get in a typical workout?
Right. So they're sending a pretty rigorous regimen. A combination of strength and fitness stuff. So there will be days where it'll be a longer distance run or bike, and they've delivered us stationary bikes, which is very, very useful. So we'll either have like a longer distance and then followed by a faster, shorter distance run. And then once a week we Zoom call and do a strength program together, which is nice just to even see everyone's face, is good. And, obviously a bunch of us are doing our own stuff. I know for sure strength is something that I wanted to improve on during this time. So that's something that I'm trying to focus on as well, along with the stuff that they've sent us.
And hypothetically, Henry, I'm just curious, how long do you think it would take for the team to kind of get back into shape? Obviously, it's kind of an unusual situation with the season on pause, but how long do you expect to, with your workouts, how long do you think there'll be? Do you think you'll need another preseason? Do you think you'll need another couple of weeks to ramp up and get on the same page?
Right. It's a good question. I think Bruce recently was asked something similar, and he said about a month. So he knows far better than I do with his experience. So I'll take his word for it. But I think, everyone's doing their best to stay in shape. But there's not too much that we've been doing with the ball. So maybe even if the fitness piece is there, we still need time with the ball to shake off some rust, I guess.
Yeah. You mentioned Bruce. He said after the Super Draft that if he had the number 1 pick, he would have selected you with it. And it came out that Bruce and Chris Tierney had gone down to some UVA games, and they had been scouting you for a while. Were you aware of their interest as the season was going on last fall? When were you aware of Bruce Arena's interest in you?
Rewind a little bit. The first time I met Bruce was probably during my sophomore year, right? Just being at UVA. I think he comes down once the MLS season is over. Mm-hmm. And then during my junior year, I started to see him more and more. So he came to quite a few games, especially once the Rev season had ended in 2019. So around the ACC tournament, NCAA tournament, I saw him pretty much at every practice then too. So, if there's a pro coach that's coming to all of your practices, that certainly is an indication that he might be interested. And it might not have only been me, but there were three other guys in contention for the draft: Daryl DK, Joe Bell, and Robin Afamafuna. So I knew there was interest in the squad. I didn't know it was particularly for me, but in hindsight, that's that's what it was. So obviously flattered that he was very interested and said that he would take me number 1 overall. It's instilled a lot of confidence in me.
Some mock drafts had you going number 6 going into the draft. What were your expectations on draft day? Did you have in the back of your mind that New England might be a landing spot for you?
I did. So I knew I could go anywhere. Well, I was kind of told that 3 through 6 is where I could land. So I knew Miami potentially wanted to take a defender, and that Orlando might be a place too. But I was told the day before the draft that if I was available at 6, New England would take me, and I'm thankful they did.
And Evan, you mentioned that Bruce Arena went down to the University of Virginia a lot. Do you think the connection of him being a UVA alumni and him going down and being at all those games, do you think it might have helped your draft stock and helped with, the Bruce Arena connection?
Yeah, a little bit. I think it maybe just gave him some reassurance that he knew what he was getting coming from a program like that. But I think regardless of where I went, I would have been the same player. I think it was just that he had more opportunity to see me at Virginia than anywhere else.
And you obviously had a fantastic run with Virginia in your last season there with a disappointing finish to it. But what was that experience like in your final season at Virginia, making it to the championship and the tough loss? And did that make it even harder to kind of leave early after that?
Yeah, it does. It really does. It was a great run, like you said. Me personally, I thought no doubt we were the best team in college soccer. So I think that might be what makes it hardest, is that we felt we were better than every team we played, really. So not coming away with the NCAA title was for sure a bummer. I've talked about it with several teammates, and it really does still hurt. But we had a really good run, fantastic season, and I just think it was the right time for me to leave. So while I would have loved to have won an NCAA championship, I couldn't pass this opportunity up.
And it seems like less and less draft picks now are jumping right into starting lineups. And I think, after the draft, a lot of the coverage was asking whether or not you'd be playing for Revs 2 or a bench player on the Revs. Did you ever expect that you'd jump right into the starting lineup like you did?
For me personally, I have very high expectations for myself. So, a lot of other people are surprised about this. Me personally, I'm not surprised because I know what I'm capable of and I know the potential that I have. Having said that, but I have predicted that I would be starting. I'm not sure, but I think a lot of people are surprised, and I'm not one of them.
And obviously, you've already broken into the starting lineup, but do you have any other goals or expectations for your rookie season? Assuming it gets back underway soon.
Right. Yeah. Hopefully. Yeah. I mean, just to play up to my potential. I don't want to enter any games with any nerves, and I thought I've done a good job of that so far. Sometimes I feel like that limits you, but so I think I've kept the composure thus far. So yeah, I just want to play to the best of my ability. Don't want any restrictions. Want to feel like I can play freely.
Yeah, there's a veteran core there. Have any of them helped you with the transition or have mentored you through the process?
Yeah, for sure. I would probably say, the center backs primarily, because those are the guys I spend the most time with. Between Mancien, Farrell, and De La Mea. I initially was playing a lot with Mancien, and that was great. A guy that played with Chelsea. Certainly a lot I can learn from him. And then, Farrell's been talking to me a lot too. So, those guys, all three of them really have been helpful.
And kind of on the back of the question about expectations, Andrew Farrell also has high expectations for you. He said earlier this week that he thinks you're going to be a national team center back someday, which is pretty high praise coming from a guy that's played with you 2 games. But how'd you react when you saw that Andrew said that?
Well, yeah, really nice quote from him. He told me in person first, which, when he told me that, I was, speechless. But to have a guy that believes in me like that, it means a lot. And It's really helpful, especially when I'm just starting to develop confidence, in my rookie year. It's really great to have a guy that believes in you like that. So, yeah, it was great. He's a great teammate.
And speaking of the national team, there's also another New Jersey kid that has had some call-ups recently, Matt Turner. What's it like playing with Matt and playing in front of him? Is he very vocal? Are you guys on the same page with the goalkeeper-defender communication?
Yeah, for sure. It's great playing in front of Matt. He is very vocal, and it's helpful. When he sees something that I don't, he'll make sure to tell us. So, yeah, very helpful having him give instructions behind me. Yeah, and like you said, recently got a deserved call-up to the national team, so it's great playing in front of him.
You made your debut on the 29th in February against Montreal Impact. What was it like playing at Olympic Stadium? Obviously, the result wasn't what you wanted, but it must have been a good experience to get your first start under your belt. Yeah,
for sure. It's a massive stadium. I didn't quite realize it until we got there, but it's a very large stadium. So we had the first training session the day before just to get used to the surface. The surface was a little unusual, but so we had a training session there, and you kind of get a grasp for just how big it is then. And then it's just a whole nother element when it's filled with fans. So it was for sure a great experience and one that I'll never forget.
Was the surface as bad as it looked on TV?
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't great. I just remember it almost reminded me of a basketball court, the way your shoes would squeak, and that's not supposed to happen with cleats. So, but that being said, both teams had to deal with that, so it shouldn't be an excuse.
Yeah, and probably better than playing outside in the freezing cold in Montreal in February. But
oh yeah, there was like 3 inches of snow on the ground when we landed in a blizzard. So I mean, much better than playing outside.
And what was it like making your home debut in front of the fans at Gillette?
Yeah, also a great experience. I had played in Gillette Stadium one time before against Revolution's Academy. So I had played in the stadium once before, but I was looking forward to returning. Was a great experience then, and was a great experience this most recent time. And it was just fantastic to see the Minutemen shooting their guns, get used to all that. The rebellion, everything involved with that experience was fantastic.
Did it make it extra tough to go into this extended break, having had those first 2 games and kind of dropped points based on some good chances that the team unfortunately missed?
Yeah, I mean, we'd love to have entered this break with maybe 4 points instead of 1, but that being said, I think we'll be looking to rebound once we do get back. And I have no doubt that we will. So hopefully we do that.
So you mentioned you played with the Red Bulls Academy against the Revolution. How was your experience there, and what time period were you playing for the Red Bulls Academy?
Right. So when I played against the Revolution Academy, that was actually with Beachside. But I had played with the Red Bull Academy. That was from U13 to U16. So quite a few years there. And then after that, went to Beachside, and then after that, went to college. Was your experience with the Red Bulls helpful in prepping you for college and the pros? Yeah, you're playing with a lot of good players. I certainly learned a lot there, and I do think I improved as a player while I was in their academy. Did you grow up a fan of MLS and the Red Bulls then? No, I don't think I did. I think it mostly, a fan of the league, sure. Something I aspired to play in. Was I ever really a Red Bull fan? I don't think so. But for sure, a league that I aspired to play in. But yeah, I would say more fan of the league than that club. Are there any defenders that you'd say you like to watch a lot and model yourself off of at all? Yeah, there are a few. So one that I grew up watching a lot was Laurent Koscielny. Arsenal center back, former Arsenal center back. So I liked watching him a lot. I just felt like he was really composed, good defensively and on the ball. In today's game, obviously I watched Van Dijk, pure class. Sergio Ramos a lot too. So there are a few guys that I like to emulate my game after. So you watch a lot of European soccer? Mostly the Premier League. I'll try to because that's just mostly what's on TV. Bundesliga as well occasionally is on TV. La Liga is not as accessible, but so those two leagues primarily.
Are there any kind of rivalries between the Revolution players based on which teams people support in the Revs?
I'm just starting to learn these things. I think there are quite a few Arsenal fans, but a lot of people that have that support Premier League clubs. So I guess that makes it fun. But I didn't have too long to discover these rivalries, I guess.
Kind of getting back to the proposals to get the season back on track. Have you heard about the proposal from FIFA to have 5 subs temporarily to kind of help teams deal with schedule congestion? And do you think that would actually be something that would be helpful?
Wow, that's the first I'm hearing of it. 5 subs, that's interesting. That's different.
Yeah,
almost back to college soccer in a way. But that's, for me being a defender, I don't think that would change anything. Generally, it's not a position you substitute. So I think in terms of the back four, it wouldn't change that much. But maybe for the midfielders, they cover a lot of ground, especially in a congested season. That might be helpful. And the guys up front, then the 5 substitutions might work better. I don't know. I'll have to see how that plays out. But this is the first I'm hearing of it.
Yeah, I think they've been coming up with all sorts of different potential proposals to try to fit in more games in less time, and that was one of the recent ones they had mentioned. So we'll see if that happens. So in your experience so far, who are the funniest players on the Revs?
Funniest players on the Revs? There are a couple. So Isaac, he's one of the homegrowns, one of the younger guys. I think he's very funny. Just maybe because we have more to relate to because we're closer in age. I think Christian Pania is very funny. He doesn't always speak a ton of English, but regardless, I think he's hilarious. And then Andrew Farrell, too, I think is very funny.
And have those guys been checking in with you a lot on Zoom, your different teammates, especially the defenders?
Yeah. So I've been talking with those guys. They're asking about me, about my family in New York, and thankfully they're doing well too. So, but they've been very conscious of checking up on me, which is great.
What have you been doing to kill the time with all your extra time now? And do you have any recommendations on things our listeners should be watching?
That's a good question. So I've been watching this show, Money Heist. I think it's decent.
Good choice.
Yeah, I think it's pretty good. One of my teammates, Dewan, just recently watched Stranger Things. I think that's even better if you haven't seen it yet. Also on Netflix. And then just, a movie here and there. Probably should be doing a little bit more reading than I am, but that's okay. So yeah, not up to too much other than, our fitness regimen and watching some shows here and there.
Well, thanks a lot, Henry. I appreciate your time, and both of those shows are ones I would also recommend. So good choices there.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, no problem. Thank you guys for having me. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Henry. Hope the season gets started again soon, and good luck the rest of the way when it does.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Take care.
Thanks again to Henry Kessler for joining us. As you may have noticed in that interview, we lost Greg about halfway through it, which is why I took over for the rest of those questions. The wonderful technical difficulties that happen when you're stuck isolating due to coronavirus, but I'm sure we'll figure that out for the next interview. Anyways, it was great for Henry to join us and exciting to get a player on the show. Hopefully, we'll be doing that more in the future, especially with all this downtime in the Revolution season. But excited to have Henry on, and hopefully Henry continues his great progress for the Revolution and keeps being a great player for the team. So just excited to see a rookie getting some playing time on the Revolution and jumping right into the starting lineup, which just doesn't happen very often anymore.
Yeah, and hopefully I don't have any more audio issues on my side. I'm also a rookie interviewing, so I hopefully will get things a little bit more in order and raise our standards the next time we have a player on. But yeah, great having Henry on. Certainly was very open with us, and it was a really great interview overall.
Yeah, it's exciting to have somebody like that on the show, and I think we'll be doing more of that in the future as this stuff continues on. But not too much else in the way of Revs news going on, minus one rumor we've heard in the past couple of weeks. Greg, I didn't know if you wanted to talk about that quickly. I'm not sure if it's a rumored we'd spend too much time on if there was more news to discuss, but because there's nothing out there, we might as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing else really going on. So I hopefully am getting this pronunciation correct, but a few weeks ago, it was reported that Petrus Boumal is a reported transfer target for the New England Revolution, apparently in the summer months during the summer transfer window, although right now the transfer windows are temporarily closed as a result of the coronavirus. But Kick 442, which I cannot speak to that website's reputation for transfer rumors, but Kick 442 reported a few weeks ago that the Revs are interested in the Cameroonian midfielder. He's currently playing for Ural in the Russian Premier League. Again, hopefully I'm pronouncing this correct, but he's currently playing in the Russian Premier League, but reportedly is a free agent in the summer. So he would probably be the person that takes over the potential TAM money and the potential international spot that originally was for Samba Kamara. But it's exciting. It's a apparently a free transfer, and it's a defensive midfielder that seems to be an area of the need for the Revolution. Sean, what are your thoughts on Petrus Boumal?
Yeah, I think we've talked a lot in the past that that's an area that we both agree the Revolution could potentially use an upgrade in his defensive midfield. The Revolution have a lot of options in that defensive central midfield position. Probably more numbers there than just about anywhere with Wilfred Zahibo, Scott Caldwell, Kellen Rowe, who we haven't seen at all this season. Luis Caicedo, who's fought some injuries, and Diego Fagundes, who has been playing there. So no shortage in numbers in that position, but I think there's still kind of a thought that the Revolution could perhaps use some better quality there. Zahibo has kind of come into his own in the Bruce Arena era, where it looked like he was a guy that maybe wouldn't be long term for the Revs, but he's been playing a lot better under Arena and seems to be a regular starter when he's healthy now. So it seems like he's probably going to get one of those positions. Zahibo's the one guy that kind of has height back there. So my only hesitation with this signing is, he's another defensive midfielder that's kind of on the shorter side at 5'9" for that position. It is a position where I always think it's good to have at least one of your two guys with a big body, and the Revs do have that in Zahibo, but all of their other options, whether it's Fagundes, Rowe, Caldwell, Caicedo, are all kind of undersized for the position. So I'm a little bit surprised that the Revolution would kind of go after another guy that's on the shorter side. With that said, he does have a decent pedigree, having been playing in the Russian Premier League. He's also in the past played in Bulgaria. Kind of played all over the place in the French league at one point. Not too many minutes there, but had played there as well. So it's hard to kind of have a read. It seems like he's a guy that could be an upgrade over those guys we just mentioned, but it's hard to say for certain based on where he's played, and obviously based on those being leagues that I don't think either of us watch with any regularity.
Yeah, and normally our my preferred scouting database, FIFA, is really unavailable because they don't have the Russian Premier League in these games. So I'm relying on Football Manager scouting reports here. I'm not totally sure how much of an upgrade he is over Wilfred Zahibo and Luis Caicedo for a lot of reasons that you mentioned earlier. I do wonder if he is potentially going to be playing the role that we saw Diego Fagundes in the first few games. If Seth was here, Seth McCover from the Bet Musket was here, he talked about how Bruce Arena likes his left-footed players, which Boumal is. He's a very aggressive tackler. He's wins a lot of balls in the midfield from his highlight reel. So I wonder if he's looking to, instead of replace Zahibo or Luis Caicedo and pair with Diego Fagundes, I'm wondering if he's maybe going to move Diego Fagundes to kind of a bench role, to come off the bench, kind of on that wing position that we saw Tayon Buchanan and Justin Rennicks kind of play earlier in the season. And basically replace Diego Fagundes to pair with Zahibo and Caicedo as opposed to replacing one of them. That's kind of my read of the situation. Again, this rumor might not be very legitimate at all, but that's kind of my read on it here. But overall, as you say, he certainly has a decent resume and a decent pedigree that if he did come to the Revs, he's not here as a depth signing like Samba Kamara. He seems like someone who would step in and make a impact on day one.
Well, what is interesting is, Who Scored does have Russian Premier League data, which I always, like to look at because they have kind of the in-depth stats. And for him this year, he's averaging 53 passes per game, which is far more than any Revolution player. Obviously, some of that could be based on style, but the most passes per game that a Revs player is averaging this season is Fagundes at 42.5. And you look at his teammates, and he's also, 10 passes ahead of the second most average passes per game of anybody on his team. And that's even with 2 of his appearances coming as a substitute and him only having, I think, 8 starts this year. So, he's obviously a guy that when he is on the field is heavily involved in the play, and it seems like a lot of play runs through him. He's also averaged, a key pass every other game, which kind of shows he can create something on offense. He seems like a guy that's a key part of their team when he does play, and is heavily involved in kind of everything they do. That's what that tells me when I see that he's averaging 10 more passes per game than anyone else in his team. So the Revolution could certainly use someone that is a bit more dominant in that position. I don't know if there's any truth to this rumor, but it would certainly be an interesting option for the Revolution to go out there and get this guy and add some competition at a position that I think as I said, both of us think the Revolution could potentially upgrade at.
And one thing too, if you watch highlight reels, you'll see a bunch of plays where he goes in hard on a tackle, or he's very aggressive at jumping up, taking the ball away from someone, and then immediately leading a counterattack, making that first pass and going the other way. So I think that's a dynamic that the Revs are looking for. And Diego Fagundes kind of pushing back into that central defensive midfield spot. It kind of had mixed reviews. It isn't terrible, but I think that this is a guy that might be able to fill that spot that Bruce Arena likes so much.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I don't want to spend too much time on it because it's it's just one of those rumors out there. But it'll be interesting to see what happens. And I think that's all we had to talk about on today's show. Unless you had anything else, Greg, you want to bring up?
Just about an hour ago, we're recording this on Friday. Not sure when we're going to release this, but about an hour ago, the Revolution released the list of players that have graduated from the Revs Academy and are going to college and where they've committed to. There are a couple of interesting names that I think if you follow the Revolution Academy that are kind of high, quote unquote, high profile names. But Trevor Burns, who is Mike Burns' son, is going to Georgetown, who is the reigning national champs. They beat Henry Kessler's UVA side last year. So Georgetown, obviously a great program that Trevor Burns is going into. And then Elliot Jones, the goalkeeper, who I think is a top prospect coming out of the academy, is going to Stanford, who they were 3-time back-to-back national champs earlier in the decade, I think 15 through 17. So 2 Revolution Academy players going to very, very high-profile programs. Yeah,
and it's exciting to see a few guys going to some of the colleges that we have connections to, with one player going to Bryant and a couple guys going to Boston College, and with you and your wife going to Penn now, seeing someone going to Penn as well. So that's kind of cool to see all those connections. But hopefully at least one guy from this class ends up coming back to the Revolution and helping out the team. Always good to see the homegrown players when they do well.
Yeah, and obviously we've seen a lot more homegrown signings in recent years, so I wouldn't put it past one of these guys coming back to the Revolution in a few years and again, making an impact on the field.
And before we wrap things up, Greg, you want to give out all of our social media handles where people should follow us?
Yeah, it's kind of weird doing kind of the reverse side, but yeah, you can follow our podcast at Revolution Recap, and also be sure to like our Facebook page.
You can follow me at Sean L. Donahue, a little bit quieter when there's no stats for me to tweet out. But thanks again to everyone for listening. Thanks, Greg, for joining again. And thanks again to Henry Kessler for joining us for this episode. Well, we don't know when we'll be back, but we'll certainly working on more content that we can have during this downtime from playing. And if you can, make sure to leave us a review on iTunes, especially if it's a good review. Thanks again for listening.